do have broad shoulders. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Look, firstly, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you for coming this evening and giving me the opportunity to present to you Mosaic Property Group. I also understand that everyone's busy. We get really busy. So, I certainly thank you for taking the time. Talking about busy, the market has certainly changed in southeast Queensland. So, after a extended period of underperformance relative to the southern states, certainly without exception, Gold Coast, Brisbane, Sunshine Coast, market fundamentals are very, very strong. So we're all busy, and certainly my team are the busiest we've been in 4 or 5 years. So I can tell you that Chris, he did say we're having 3 speakers tonight. And I said, Chris, I'm really busy, because he did ring me this afternoon, and I think that was just to make sure that I got on the plane. But because he didn't really say much else except for the fact I said, mate, I'm sorry. I said I'd get to the office early, but I've been flat out. We've got 60 contracts in project across the 3 offices. He said, it's okay, just relax. He said, you're actually going to be in the top 3 speakers this evening. And then he did say, I can confirm, he did say, yes, well, normally we save the best to last, but we are going to change the order tonight. So thanks, mate. Tonight I'll take you through just a brief introduction to Mosaic Property Group. I'll chat to you about some of our resale performance. I think it's really important. The reality is a lot of our current resales and most recent resales have been counter to the market. So positive resale performance, which has been contradictory to the bulk of the market. And then I'll introduce you to a couple of projects briefly that we have in market, and one of particular importance obviously is Avalon, which is literally, for any golfers there, it's a driver 3-wood and 6-iron to that master plan CBD that Terry spoke about. Love it when everyone steals the thunder. Where are you, mate? Thank you. So I think in reality, I hear often a lot of people talk about what's the best market to be in. Everyone focuses on the right market. And ultimately, I think something that's equally important when you're talking about residential property is not just the market, but it's what the product in that market as well. I think that has as much importance to resale performance, to capital growth, to your outcomes, as being in the right market. Counter to that is when you're buying, who are you buying off? What's their brand? What's their track record? And what's their capacity to deliver on the expectation that you as a buyer are signing up for? So in regard to that, we have a very, very unique brand and track record. So I think it's 16 years of operation. We've completed 47 projects in that time. That's a lot, guys, for a small or relatively small team, a private developer. It's about $1.2 billion worth of real estate. As mentioned, I think 2 years ago we were the most awarded developer in Queensland, which is a big feat, going up against the big listed players. I think in terms of this jigsaw, without question, the most important number up there is that one there, 100%. So 100% success and delivery rate. What that means is we have never missed a pre-sale target. We have at no point in that 16 years or across those 47 projects have we ever got to construction completion and had one dwelling for sale. We have never discounted a property, and our settlement rate is 100%, which means we understand our buyers. We've got very strong buyers, and they understand what they're buying and their capacity to settle. We do have a very unique business model, particularly for a private developer, which I'll elaborate on. I think that's also very important, because that's counter to our capacity to deliver on what we say. And part of that is we also do the property management, and we've got roughly, we're nudging 1,000 dwellings, and a real easy number to remember is our vacancy rate, which is 0. And across the 3 offices, we operate in Gold Coast, Brisbane, Sunshine Coast. We've got over 110 very, very dedicated staff these days. I sort of, I don't go to award ceremonies. I don't get too wrapped up in them, but they are important for our buyers. Our buyers feel comfort in it, and it's also a great marker for a team of wonderful people that get a thrill when they get to go to those events. So we are considered one of the premier developers, particularly in the private space in Queensland. The unique business model, guys, is most developers run a very small team and they outsource everything. So contradictory to that, our capacity to deliver, which we're very, very proud of, is the fact that we control every part of the development process. So we run a team across every single facet from start to finish. So guys, I can tell you that there are no excuses. So we're a brand that is very, very proud of what we deliver, and our capacity to fill that, to meet the expectations of that brand, is spot on every single time. So that includes the sites that we acquire. So we have an in-house acquisitions team. We have our own research department, and we share that data with all the research houses in the country. Design. So whilst we have interior design team, we now partner also with some of the leading architects in the country. So when you consider that there's so much feedback and intuition and data that we've collected over 16 years, when you're constantly talking to your buyers and the people that live in your buildings, to not be able to share that with the architects that we're dealing with is silly. Because functionality, size and how apartments work, outside of making them look pretty, is critical for how we want to live in our dwellings. Obviously sales and marketing, we have retail teams there. So we operate 3 retail showrooms across Brisbane, Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast. And our retail offering, we pride ourselves on that, which means that we have great experience. We sell a lot more to owner-occupiers than most of our competitors. And I think that's very, very critical, particularly for you as an investor. Because what that's really saying is that the local market will buy what you're not buying investor-grade product. Communities, we obviously engage well with the community. We have a community engagement team, so managing external stakeholders certainly helps us get our projects off the ground. Construction's something that's critical. So we don't outsource to external builders. So there's no excuses. We've got great quality control, and managing the expectations around the timing and the completion of our buildings is exceptional. And then at the back end, the asset management. So not only do we do property management, but we also control the buildings from a management rights perspective. So we understand that owners have an emotional connection to their house or their apartment or their townhouse. So how that building or community is kept, both when it looks brand new and 10 or 15 years later, which has a massive effect on either an investor or an owner-occupier's resale capacity, we control that. So we control the management rights, and what we call enduring value is that we're committing to being caretakers of the buildings for the next 25 years, which is why our resale performances are so strong. So essentially, the keys to the business are exclusivity, architecture and design, functionality, amenity and customer experience. I think Terry was mentioning, and he touched on, for a community of 370,000 odd people on the Sunshine Coast, they're spending $20 billion on infrastructure. It's just absolutely amazing. I think that the infrastructure and the amenity being delivered on the Sunshine Coast is rare and unique, but I certainly appeal to the consensus that I don't think infrastructure alone will drive performance, or should I say, I think that whilst infrastructure and amenity are key drivers, what's equally as critical is purchasing product that has mass demand or demand from the local market, i.e. the owner-occupier market. I see often people buy in markets and they buy the wrong product. And I certainly see when markets move, and I'm sure that there are others here that have heard other horror stories, where people are buying the market and buying product that is not relative to the local consumer. Just put this slide in, or the team did. This is Mosaic resale performance compared to the wider market. Because essentially, as investors, what you're trying to do is buy not only in the right market, but outperform that. So you'll note there that we don't actually have a large number of resales. It's grown since then, particularly with some trading on our Sunshine Coast projects. But we've actually got under 20 resales in the last 16 years. 92% of those are at a premium. And you can see, which obviously means that people enjoy living in our buildings. When we're selling a lot to owner-occupiers, that's a lot of people that are buying for the long haul. So you can see our performance there relative to the wider market. So what that is Mosaic resales compared against resale performance of non-Mosaic product in the same market. Just shared a couple of case studies here, which is relative to the Sunshine Coast. So these are, guys, we sort of went to the Sunshine Coast about 3 years ago. We've developed and completed 3 projects now. We'd be the largest sort of luxury developer on the Sunshine Coast in the last 5 years. This is a project completed recently. This particular buyer actually is a guy that works, he was the head of retail for the Marina Bay Sands Group in Singapore. I deal a lot with wealthy expats. He had an emotional connection to Caloundra because that's where he grew up. He bought a penthouse off me. I resold that at a premium for him into the local market, and he took that uplift and bought in our Avalon project. So he used that uplift plus his initial deposit and purchased a $2.7 million half floor in Avalon. So he's certainly a happy camper. This is about 300 metres down the road. Is it? So David Sargent, ladies and gentlemen, he's recently joined my team after working as an external consultant for a number of years. So a lot of the people that sell for us also buy for us. So David's bought, he's sold at a premium, and he's bought again off us on the Sunshine Coast. So you can't argue with that in terms of capacity and commitment. Having the right fundamentals, the right product, the right market, it takes a lot to get things to work. I think there's 1 in 4 projects actually get off the ground, new releases in both the Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast markets over the last 10 years. And this is an example where this is our most recently completed project. So we completed it at Christmas time. We were 77% sold direct through a showroom. The bulk of the sales occurred within about 4 to 6 weeks of launch. 30% were sold pre-release. The majority of our buyers here are either local buyers consisting of downsizers, or buyers that are either from Sydney and Melbourne who are looking to either relocate and downsize, or they're wealthy New South Welshmen and Victorians who want to live either full or part-time on the Sunshine Coast. The reality for this project is, on completion, we had one lady purchase. She purchased a 2-bedder. She's a local buyer. She paid $590. She was the only disappointed buyer in the whole building. And we sort of said, everyone loves it, not sure, what is it that you don't like? She said, look, I bought for an investment. I should have bought a 3-bedder to live. So we sold that within the first week of settlement at $650. So guys, that's market, that's product driven, not market. And she purchased off us in a new project we've got 300 yards down the road. Now, to give you an idea, the next project, actually, this is the project. The development game is not easy. To give you an idea, that particular site, there were 2 failed attempts previously from other developers on that site. So you can imagine when we bought the site, it's a really difficult game. Firstly, you've got to be able to buy good land. You then got to come up with a design that fits a broad market that you can sell. You've then got to take that design and sell it. You've got to be able to build it for what you think you can. Then you've got to be able to settle it and then go and manage it. And most fail. So for us, we launched that project. It was one of our fastest ever selling projects, and we did so in a time where 300 metres down the road was a competing development in arguably a slightly superior location. So First Bay was the name of the project. The developers launched that. We gave them 4 months head start, and by the time we had hit our construction funding, so we were at about 70%, they were yet to secure 1 sale. Now, one of the reasons for that is, obviously when you're buying off the plan, they were new to the development space. They're very wealthy people, but they'd made their money in shopping centres. They had no display. They had no previous track record. So suffice to say that they went nowhere with the project. And when you're comparing, say, Mosaic's brand and track record, the showroom, the display, the experience, our capacity to bring buyers to other projects that we have as displays and walk through physical product, our capacity to say, go and meet our Brisbane team, go and look at 40 odd buildings around Brisbane. We now own that site. We launched that site just prior to Christmas. So this is, people often ask me, what's the best investment property to buy? I say don't. Buy property that the local market are desperate to own, that they can afford, that's rare and that's unique. And so hence we had 420 people registered on an exclusive list to be seen previous to us going retail with this project. We sold 26 of 38 apartments in the first 3 weeks off market. That, ladies and gentlemen, that is not the market, that is the brand. That is the confidence in the brand, and that is the fact that what we are delivering is very rare relative to everything else in the market. So this is the project, First Bay. So it's cool, and you know, what are some of the keys for us on the Sunshine Coast is there's lots of available land. Go and ask Stockland, they've got about 35,000 lots to sell. So what's our strategy and where is it that we're focusing our efforts on? So if it's Sunshine Coast or it's Gold Coast, then the markets that we are is we're beachfront or riverfront. So the land that has the most value, is the most highly sought after, is the most exclusive, is the best real estate, and it's the hardest to replicate. Because that will be the real estate over time that performs the best. So same thing, Gold Coast, we are Brisbane. Sorry, no we're not. Brisbane's not in the Gold Coast. We are Broadbeach to Coolangatta, eastern side of the highway only. If you're talking about Brisbane, we have a very disciplined strategy. So if it's apartments, we are predominantly 2 to 7 kilometres from the CBD in A-grade areas. Areas where the predominant housing type is detached house, where supply is constrained. So you can see that we've got a really disciplined approach to what we develop and where. So I'll put a selection of renders for you, just so that you get an idea for the product that we deliver. So we're certainly a design-led company. So there is some availability, not a lot for that particular project. But I just wanted to share with you our latest release, which is almost sold out, and to give you some further confidence, perhaps, if you go and ask most developers how they fared last year, and you would have heard from Terry, for example, I can assure you that 4 months leading into the election, there were plenty of reasons for a buyer to put their hands on their heads and say, I'll sit out and wait for the election. And I can tell you that I've never worked so hard, because when you've got eight projects in market and you can't go backwards, you can only go forwards, and a track record that you've got to protect, then it's called just turn over more rocks. The reality for how we fared last year, to be perfectly honest, it was our best year ever on record. I think once the election was over, there was a feeling of relief. And I can tell you that we sold more luxury product last year than in the last 5 years combined. We sold more direct through showrooms to owner-occupiers than we ever had. And so that says to me that there was a genuine flight to quality. And there was a fear of the unknown. So people wanted brands that they can trust and product that they wanted to live in. So when the investor market deserted most developers, given the fact that we have a brand that is so relevant in each of the markets that we occupy to the local buyer, so effectively our best selling partner last year was us, retail direct showroom. I can tell you that the start of this year, we've had a record January and a record February. So on top of strong owner-occupier demand, with certainty, the market fundamentals for Queensland are the best they've been in 10 to 15 years. Hence Chris making sure I got on the plane. Ladies and gentlemen, Avalon is a project that we're very, very proud of. It has significant meaning for us because it will also house the commercial there will be our Sunshine Coast base. It's also host to a lot of the most significant or expensive sales that we have as a company. Again, for anyone that's not aware, the Master Plan CBD that Terry spoke about is virtually directly behind, back here. For the golfers, it's probably driver, 3-wood, long 2-iron. I'm in sales, forgive me. It's a really, really special piece of land. So this particular land, when you've got about an acre of absolute river frontage, so there's not a lot of this river frontage, it's about a 900 kilometre stretch. There's very, very few remaining opportunities to develop. So you've got highly exclusive, very rare, very hard to replicate real estate. And then what we have put on that land is genuinely, truly exceptional. And I'll be honest, if Terry thought that 6 million was a surprise for the Sunshine Coast, then to be quite frank, it surprised me too. Our plan was not to have a $6 million apartment. We thought that a half floor on the penthouse at 3 million would pull that market up. And the reality is that we're pleased to say that we were very wrong. So the market told us that no, we want a full floor. And we said, well, a full floor is 6 million. And they said that we're happy to pay, provided that you can do what we want. And we certainly understand that that particular buyer that's paying $6 million, they want to know with certainty that your capacity to deliver on their expectation, and they also want to have a bespoke experience, which meant they pretty much, or to a degree, had a lot of input in the individual design of that apartment with regards to layout. In terms of depth of that luxury market, we have two. Here it is here. So that's the river building, Azure. So to give you an idea, it was a selection of luxury properties. The cheapie in there was 1.77. There were 2 river homes in there for just under 3, and then the half floors were 2.4 to 2.7. We were pretty much sold out of this in a couple of months. And so, again, the depth of that luxury market surprised us. The reality for that was we had to put on hold the release of the second building because those buyers took a lot of time. You can imagine when the importance of that type of purchase for a lot of those people. A lot of them were downsizers, so very, very important decisions. Those types of buyers require a lot of attention. This project I guess, will be a masterpiece project for Mosaic on the Sunshine Coast. It's at the heart of the Maroochydore CBD. So when we were talking with council, trying to get the site approved, what they wanted to make sure was that as the throat or the entrance to the CBD, that there was a community space, or the project engaged with the local community. So that meant having a restaurant, cafe, bar. The landscaping was critical with regards to how the project interacted with the community, so the council were quite vocal on that. The reality for this project is the buyers that buy in the Arbour building, they get to share the same amenity that the buyers that are paying 5.67, 6 million, 3 million, the amenity that they demand. So really, really rare project, very unique opportunity. That particular piece of land had been held within the same family for multiple generations, nearly 100 years. One of the reasons that they agreed to sell to us was given the fact that we demonstrated an exceptional design. They're a famous architectural family. So our design intent and our capacity to deliver that were one of the reasons that the family sold to us.